Reach out to Governor Herbert. Text 57500 or call him at 801-575-8255. It's Let Me Speak to the Governor.
It's been a while since we've had a Let Me Speak to the Governor because of the election season. We put it on hiatus when people are running for a particular office. And, Governor, it is good to have you back. And
hey, we have 4 more years of fun.
4 more years.
4 more years, Doug. So maybe I'll start growing my beard out. I'll do pull an Abraham Lincoln.
Or you could go a Governor Spry look.
There you go.
You know? I mean, some of the great old governors, they had rather frosty beards.
My wife used to like it when I had a mustache, but
well, I heard you look like Tom Selleck.
Exactly. That's what I kept saying.
I look like Santa Claus, and he looks like Tom Selleck. Let's go back to our phone lines, and Paul is joining us on the line. And Paul, what's your question for Governor Herbert?
Yeah, thanks, Governor Herbert.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank you. I think you're doing a great job. I just have a question. I watch the news quite a bit, and I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, and most of the newscasts are just very anti-Trump. It seems like he can do nothing right. There's always something negative. And maybe you're familiar with George Soros. There's evidence he's actually funded a lot of these protests that have turned into riots. He's actually paying people for this. And then I heard that President Obama is actually setting up kind of clandestine groups to oppose what President Trump's trying to do. I've never seen a president in history who's had this much opposition from the media and from other politicians, from people in the other party and from people in his party. Just wondering, what's your take on this? Do you support President Trump in general, and what do you think about all this opposition? And
okay, let's get the governor's response to that.
Well, it's a unique time, a unique time in our country. We certainly are divided as a country. That's unfortunate. Even President Obama said in his last State of the Nation was that I wanted to unite the people, and yet we're more divided now than ever. So he recognized the division amongst the people. That seems to be continuing with the Trump administration. Certainly a rule of thumb in politics is don't give your enemies a club to hit you over the head with, and some of the rhetoric out there gives people reason to pounce on the rhetoric and maybe not on the substance of what the rhetoric was supposed to, focus on. So, again, I have a good friend in Mike Pence, the vice president, who I have a lot of regard for. And I've told him, I think you have a significant challenge because you have a person, well-intentioned as he may be, that has no experience. And he's never run for office before, really. He's never been elected to office before. And now, all of a sudden, he finds himself the leader of the free world, the most powerful politician in the world. And that's quite a contrast to what he's been doing in the past. So I expect him to stub his toes a few times along the way and scrape his knee. Hopefully he'll learn along the way. I was asked this question earlier today about Trump, and I said, hey, it's like asking you to do some plumbing work at my house, and you've never been a plumber before. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised if you pick up the wrong wrench now and again. So I cut him a little slack. I think there's an opportunity in 2 areas for the Trump administration to really make good strides, positive, in behalf of all Americans. One is his appointments. It's not just the Supreme Court, but getting appointments to the federal bench, which has been so politicized over the past number of years that I think we have way too much activism. I don't care whether it's on the right or the left, there ought not to be any. And yet we see it taking place. So good appointments to the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, is really an important thing. Appointments to staff, appointments to cabinet members, those are important things that will help us get the right thing done. My good friend, former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, is over energy. I've talked with him. I think there's an opportunity for us to have a balanced approach and a rational approach that's environmentally sensitive, by the way, when it comes to energy development in this country. So I think that's a good appointment. Last but not least, I do believe that President Trump understands what should be the elevated role of the states. We've kind of been diminished as kind of a junior partner when we are, in fact, co-equal with the federal government, and we ought to be utilized as a partner in developing policy. The states really are the ones that are finding solutions unique to their own populations. And so if President Trump will allow the states to have an elevated role in policy and in solving the people of America's challenges and problems, we can have actually a very productive next 4 years. So those two things are what I'm going to emphasize as we get back to Washington. I'm going back next week to visit with the president and the vice president, with the other governors as part of our National Governors Association meetings. And I think that'll be two of the things that we'll emphasize in a bipartisan way, by the way.
Let's go to Marvin, who is on the line in Brigham City, with this reminder that we do have several lines available at 575-8255, area code 801, of course. 575-8255, so you can speak with the governor. And Marvin, what's your question for Governor Herbert?
Hi, Doug and Governor. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
My question is every time the legislature is in session, like the past 10 years, all we hear about is the shortfall of the education money and dollars. And there's a very simple solution to this, and it's the Powerball lottery that's held in several states that are adjacent to Utah. There are several people that leave the state to go purchase the lottery tickets and say they go to Idaho. They're supporting the school districts in Idaho. Why don't we keep that money in Utah? I'll hang up and let you please give me a rebuttal.
Well, thank you, Marvin. And I don't know so much as a rebuttal as maybe an explanation. I think that the idea of a lottery is one that has mixed reviews. The states that have them, some like it, some don't like it. There's an element that comes along with gambling that sometimes is a little unseemly. Not that those who play lottery are unseemly people, but there's what happens when you open the doors to gambling. And that's the concern that I think most of we have in Utah, because we're one of only 2 states that does not have any ability to have gambling. And once you open it up, then you end up having opportunities for casinos. Our reservations, we've already had indications that some on the Indian reservations would say, if we have gambling in Utah, we're going to bring in a casino. And there's just the culture of Utah doesn't seem to warrant and support that. And that's really the end of the day. It's we are a representative form of government. We need to reflect the principles and the values and develop policies that reflect the will of the people and the majority, as at the same time protecting the needs of the minority under our Constitution. That's a challenging balancing act, but I don't think that we have really any time soon here a demand from the public to say we need to have a lottery. Having more money and more revenue, and there's certainly options out there. There might be 6 or 8 different ways to go about this, of which the lottery is one. And I expect as we talk about tax reform and the need for more revenue, particularly for education, it's certainly one of those that will be talked about, at least on the list. But I think it would be found at the very bottom of the list right now with the culture of Utah.
We have Brian, who is joining us on the line from Roy, Utah. And Brian, go ahead with your question for the governor.
Hello, Governor. Thank you for taking the time to speak with your constituents.
Thank you, Brian.
I just wanted to know what kind of plans are in place to help clean the air in the Wasatch Front. It's a big problem, and I was really concerned when we were trying to get with Chaffetz and talk to him about it, and there seems to be some disconnect, and he was saying that people were brought in and whatnot from out of state to just throw a wrench in the whole talk. But anyway,
Okay, let's
into air quality.
Sure.
Brian, well, thank you for your call, and I can't comment on Congressman Chaffetz and the town hall meeting. I think if anything that we learn, we ought to be civil, and that's a two-way requirement for us as elected officials and those we dialogue with to make sure we're civil and respectful in our tone. I think we'll get more accomplished with that. When it comes to air pollution, we have a problem, and it's a significant issue, certainly impacting the health and well-being of our population, certainly along the Wasatch Front, but not only along the Wasatch Front. We have air quality challenges up in the Cache Valley. We have air challenges in the airshed in the Uinta Basin, and we certainly have an acute problem here along the Wasatch Front. What has been done and what we are doing is to, in fact, find ways to reduce pollution into the air. We have a uniqueness in that although we've reduced our pollution so that we are the lowest polluting per capita metropolitan area in America, when you have this lid of inversion, even though you're polluting less, it captures and eventually it stores up and we have gunky air. So that's not an excuse, by the way. That's just the facts that we have to deal with. We've put 30 different regulations on place to mandate that industry and commercial enterprises have best available technology. And with that effort, we've reduced our pollution levels over the last 12 years by 30%. That's a 46% reduction per capita of our pollutants in the air. So that means that we are actually cleaner now than we were 10 years ago. So that's a good trend. Doesn't mean we should be satisfied, but that's a good trend, and we're doing a lot with industry and commercial enterprise. Where we still have more to do is, in fact, with our own personal responsibilities in this effort, particularly with automobiles. About 50% of all the pollution you see in the gunky days out there, of which we have on average about 18, and sometimes it'll be the worst air in America, but many more times we're the best air in America, so we ought not to forget the good side. But 18 days is too many, and we have pollution that comes out of our tailpipes. We're trying to work with our refineries and others to bring in lower sulfur fuels. That's working. That will happen. We call them Tier 3 fuels. Tesoro, for example, has indicated they'll bring those in. We should meet all the federal requirements and mandates by 2019 to meet federal standards. So I feel good about the trend, but it's going to be a shared responsibility. We need to use our mass transit, of which we've spent billions of dollars on, to allow people to have abilities to park your car and carpool or take the tracks or the front runner. And if we do that, we can do a lot towards cleaning up the air that we have and reduce pollution even more.
Governor Jay is joining us on the line right now from Salt Lake City. Jay, what's your question?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. I wanted to know what you on the possibility of bringing legalized motorcycle lane splitting to the state of Utah. I've seen a lot of studies about it in the past, and the overwhelming result is it shows decrease in emissions and increase in safety of the riders, as well as decrease in congestion. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the possibility of that coming to Utah.
Well, I haven't heard about it till now, Jay, so it may not be on anybody's radar screen, and you're bringing it to our attention. I understand, if I understand correctly, you're talking about a divided lane or a designated lane for just motorcycles only?
No, I'm talking about legalizing motorcycles driving basically down the line between lanes.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So take advantage of the gaps between the automobiles. I guess it's something we ought to think about, and I expect it's being done in other places. I was on a trade mission to one of the South American countries, and they had more motorcycles, it seemed like, than they had automobiles, and they were zipping down between cars and down the lines. And the law enforcement people said, we have about 5 deaths a day because of that high congestion and motorcycles just zipping around. So I would need to be really convinced that the public safety is not being jeopardized if we had that kind of motorcycle ability. And so I'm probably not ready to make any statement on a position. I'm happy to look at it, but I would have concerns about the public safety, not only of the motorcyclist, but what they would do to endanger other traffic and other competing automobiles and trucks out there. So maybe we can look at it, but what I've seen in South America was not impressive.
Governor, there is one issue that I'm aware of, and there may be more, but this one I'm aware of on Capitol Hill, and that is the idea of requiring helmets for those up to the age of 21 instead of just 18. Is that something that you're supporting?
Well, I haven't taken a position on that. Again, it's about public safety. We have some in the motorcycle group that say, helmets end up making them less safe because they don't have the visibility. I think most people have come down on the fact that it's a trade-off, and we are making helmets that are a lot more able to have good visibility and still protect you if you happen to have a crash, and the impact on your head is less. So I'm a kind of a pro-helmet guy. I would never think of being on a motorcycle without a helmet. I do ride occasionally with some of our highway patrol troopers, but it's always with a helmet. I think there is some maturity that comes, and I guess I know we consider people to be in their majority, an adult when they're 18. And the question really is there more maturity so you can make the decision to wear or not to wear after you're 21? My decision is you ought to wear them.
Let's take a brief break. Let me speak to the governor here at KSL News Radio. We appreciate Governor Gary Herbert joining us. We'll come back